Ladies and gentlemen, good day. Before we start our program, we want to make sure we keep in Afro and African tradition and ask my elders in the room, if you are over 55, do I have permission to speak? Thank you. So, welcome to the Malcolm X Memorial Foundation. My name is Leo Lewis. If you don't know who I am a long-term volunteer with the organization, human more than anything, and over time I've been given the title of board president, but more or less I'm a servant to the community. So Malcolm X said that his favorite piece of equipment that he kept with him was his watch, because it always kept him on time, and time was the only thing that you cannot get back. So we want to be as prompt as we can with this service. So anyone who considers himself an elder, we'd like for you to go into the back and start to get your plate now. We will continue on with the presentation. However, we want to make sure that everybody eats within this lunch hour and gets out of here on time. So the order of operations will be as such. We'll have a presentation by Gus Newport, who is a good friend of Malcolm X. He also worked with Malcolm in 1963 in Rochester, New York, doing organizing around police brutality. We will be following that up with a presentation by Bobby Seale, the chairperson of the Black Panther Party. That's all live on Zoom. Then we will be followed up by the great and esteemed Karen Wells, who's the mother of Amir Knox and an advocate for no-knock warrants. This will be the order of presentation. So at this time, if you are at a table and you are an elder at that table, please go back now and start to grab your plate. While that takes place, we will queue up for Brother Gus Newport. Gus, are you prepared? Can you unmute your mic?
Yes.
All right, Brother Gus, the floor is yours. You can continue to give the introduction that I could not give for you. Thank you, Gus.
That's quite all right. I'm just a servant of the people. I was fortunate enough to know Malcolm for the final 4 years of his life. I grew up in Rochester, New York, which had a lot of police brutality, as we continue to see all over this country. Malcolm X came to Rochester after the police invaded the Black Muslim mosque. This was in 1961-62. And Daisy Bates, who history remember for integrating schools in Little Rock, Arkansas, was in Rochester doing some organizing, and Malcolm called her and said, "Daisy, I've got to come to Rochester to see about this police brutality. They arrested 8 of my Muslim brothers. Who should I be in touch with?" She gave him my phone number. I didn't even know it. When Malcolm called me, I was taken back, and he talked for 2 hours. And he called me every night for 2 weeks and talked for 2 hours, and then flew into Rochester on a cold February day. In those days, planes landed on the tarmac, and Malcolm's plane landed on the tarmac, and I'm standing inside the airport waiting on him, surrounded by all these white men in felt hats and white shirts and ties and overcoats and a whole lot of other people. Malcolm comes through the airport. We had never seen each other. He said, "Who's Gus Newport?" I raised my hand and said, "I am, sir." He said, "Youngblood, you got the best tap telephone in America. This is all FBI here." And the FBI and the police and the news media all started getting back, asking a lot of questions or whatever. As soon as he took those questions, our drivers took us down to the sheriff's office to meet with the sheriff whose jail the 8 Muslims were in. He and Malcolm compared rings from the Eastern Star and had some talks, and Malcolm got him to ease up. We went and got the 8 brothers released from jail, took them to the court, got them freed. While we were sitting in the court hearing, sheriff, who was a big fat guy, weighed about 500 pounds, fell asleep. Malcolm turns over and whispers me, he said, "Brother," he said, "the power of Allah that took that cracker's heart." I said, "Oh, Lord," but then he woke up and we all started laughing. But we got the brothers out. We took them to one of the brothers' homes to feed them because they had drunk nothing but milk all the time that they were in jail because they didn't trust the food, because Muslims don't eat any pork. Following that, we went to Baden Street Settlement House, where a public meeting was taking place. A lot of Black people from Rochester discussing the conditions that were going on. And some of the Christian ministers, when they saw Malcolm, said, "Well, we don't want to let him speak because he's not one of us." And the crowd said, no, we're going to hear from him. Malcolm got up and said, "Look, we have no business being divided. We're all Black. We're all victims of this society. And he gave one of the greatest speeches I ever heard in my life. The people just cheered him. The very next day, the New York State legislature passed a law that Malcolm X could not speak at any place, political organization, or nonprofit organization in the state of New York. They passed that law within 24 hours to show you how things happen. So we took that. Malcolm went back to New York. He returned to Rochester many times because I was head of the biggest civil rights group there. We stayed in touch. But they put so much pressure on me that I couldn't hold a job, so I ended up moving to New York, to Harlem, went to work for IBM and HRUAC, and was fortunate enough to have Malcolm and Adam Clayton Powell as my mentor for the next couple of years. Time went on, and if you remember, when John F. Kennedy was assassinated, the media interviewed Malcolm, and Malcolm said the chickens are coming home to roost. And of course, they misinterpreted what he was saying. He was saying that because John F. Kennedy, getting ready to run for re-election, had met with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the head of the Ku Klux Klan because they both wanted separate parts of the country to live in. And Malcolm had not been part and party to that. And Malcolm said, this is what I mean. Elijah Muhammad set Malcolm down for 90 days, supposedly, that then he would return him. But of course, Malcolm would become the voice of the Nation of Islam. Those 90 days passed, and he wasn't reinstated. But in the meanwhile, Malcolm exposed Elijah Muhammad because several of the young secretaries on his staff had become pregnant. One of them having been Malcolm's former girlfriend. And Malcolm exposed that. So he never got reinstated to the Nation of Islam. We created an organization called Muslim Mosque Incorporated, which didn't last too long. And then he called me and said, look, will you assist me in creating the Organization of Afro-American Unity? We had such people as Hewlin Jack, who was the borough president on that, Percy Sutton, who owned the Apollo Theater and was his lawyer, and various other people. And we used to hold meetings every Sunday uptown in the ballroom where Malcolm spoke. And we always had, we thought, clearance by police and as well as some of our own people, making sure that nobody brought weapons inside, et cetera, whatever else. During this time, Malcolm also went on the Hajj to go to Saudi Arabia to do the prayers and meetings as Muslims do. And to his surprise, he was in a tent with another Muslim who happened to be white. Malcolm recognized that he had been teaching a lie because Elijah Muhammad had told him that only blacks could be Muslims. Malcolm come back and he went to psychiatrists and said, I got to clear this up. I've been given some not telling the truth, etc., whatever else. But he got himself back together. Following that, he went to meet with many of the heads of states in Africa, Nehru and many other people and whatever else. And then he went over to Europe and he spoke at Oxford University. And he was debating with one of their greatest scholars. And halfway through the debate, the scholar stopped and said, Malcolm, I thought you said you were going to stop calling white folks devils. Malcolm hesitated for 30 seconds. He said, I am, sir, but who's going to replace you? And the whole place just broke out laughing. Malcolm was a brilliant brother. I mean, he could break it down so that everybody could clearly understand what he was saying. When he came back, we had a meeting at Sidney Poitier's house. Juanita Poitier, Sidney's first wife, hosted it. Ozzie D and Ruby Davis was there. A. Philip Randolph, Malcolm, and a couple of the brothers. Clarence Jones, who was Martin Luther King's lawyer. And Martin Luther King was on the phone from Florida because he'd been arrested once again for demonstrating. And Malcolm said during that discussion, Juanita Poitier said, Malcolm, I thought you was going to go before the United Nations. He said, I am. I'm going before the United Nations and file a suit against racism, hegemony, and colonialism. And Martin Luther King said, I'll be there to second it, brother. That phone was wiretapped by J. Edgar Hoover. And later, when we were researching some information to create a film about Malcolm, we got some of that. Sadly enough, when you think about the role that J. Edgar played, it was only 35 days after that that Malcolm was assassinated. But following that meeting at Portier's, Malcolm's house was firebombed in Queens, New York. He got his rifle, got his family out, the fire was put out. But he called me soon after that and he said, Brother Gus, I've been invited to Rochester to speak at Colgate Divinity School and to Cornhill Methodist Church. Rochester is where I met you. Will you fly there with me? So I flew to Rochester with Malcolm. On the plane going to Rochester, we're sitting in the same aisle. The middle seat was empty. Malcolm turns to me and said, Brother Gus, I'm a dead man. I said, Brother Malcolm, what you talking about, sir? He said, my intelligence tells me there's a hit out on my life, but I'm not going to change my ways. Well, I had called a couple of friends that I grew up with in Rochester, who were on the Black brothers who were on the police force. They met us at the tarmac as we got off the plane, and they stayed with us for the 2 days we were in Rochester. Took Malcolm to his hotel room. A couple of ministers brought him a new shirt and a jacket because his clothes had gotten burned up in the fire. He gave a brilliant speech at Colgate Divinity. The school wanted to hear what true Islam was. And people didn't know the depths of Malcolm's knowledge of Islam. Malcolm was on the International Board of Islam at Geneva, Switzerland, because he was so intelligent. And he broke down Islam for what it really is. He went to Cornhill Methodist Church and he told the Blacks, he said, brothers and sisters, we got to come together. We got to stay together. We're all victims of the same set of circumstances, because a lot of the Christian ministers had not wanted Malcolm to speak when he first came to Rochester. Said, because we don't agree with where he is. Malcolm said, we're all Black and we all got the same kinds of problems. Let's forget these divisions. And the crowd just cheered. Some of the greatest talks that I ever heard were given by Malcolm X. As a matter of fact, some of you who don't know, I was the mayor of Berkeley, California from 1986. We named the school after Malcolm X, and we made Malcolm X's birthday a national holiday, in the city of Berkeley also. I just want to say this. When we finished in Rochester and flew back to New York and landed at LaGuardia Airport, we were met by the New York City Chief of Police and the New York Fire Marshal, who both accused Malcolm of firebombing his own home. Now, the brother had really cleaned up his act after he'd done prison and become a Muslim. He didn't cuss, didn't drink or anything like that. But he called them two crackers some names like I had never heard. And when he got through with them, they couldn't hold their head up. They said, well, we're sorry, but we were just told. So you told, what makes you think I'd set a fire to a house that my family was in, etc., whatever. Betty Shabazz, his wife, was there to pick him up. She was 8 months pregnant, carrying twins. Drove him to a hotel downtown. Alex Haley, who wrote the Malcolm's autobiography, was waiting on him to interview him, etc., whatever else. That Sunday, I did not go to the Audubon Ballroom where he was assassinated. I was home because I was tired from the trip and got a call from my cousin saying, where are you at? I said, I'm home. She said, thank goodness. I said, why you say that? I said, Malcolm has just been assassinated. We knew that something was up because the 2 weeks prior to Malcolm's assassination, there were police on all the rooftops in Harlem and the Bronx, all over New York. That day at the Audubon Ballroom, the police were there supposedly checking people as they come in, etc., whatever else. We now know, based on what the court system came up with recently, that the FBI and the New York police were part and party to the assassination of Malcolm X. They tried to create so many divides by saying that members of the Nation of Islam and other people responsible. It was nobody but the FBI and the police. And so we got to remember, brothers and sisters, stay together. We can see the fight is still there. We just saw what happened in Buffalo, New York, that tragedy, what we can expect out of young whites and old whites and racist-ass whites, etc., whatever else. So I say to you, Malcolm was the greatest spokesperson and one of the warmest brothers I'd ever met. Full of humor, a very warm person. As somebody said, he always had his watch on and said, we got to do things on time and whatever else. And I'm so pleased just to be a part of this day, recognizing and remembering Malcolm on his birthday. And I thank you, the Malcolm X Institute, for inviting me once again to participate with you. All praises due. That more or less is it. I'll answer any questions after. But I think we got a couple other speakers, so trying to stay in according to the time schedule.
Thank you, Uncle Gus. This is Joanna. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Good. Thank you, sir, for being here. All right, I just want to have a quick transition. Hello, everybody. I'm Joanna LaFleur. I'm the director here, and I'm so happy to see familiar and new faces. If you have not gotten a chance to grab something to eat, we are allowed for a 5-minute break. Also, I wanted to make sure you knew there are 4 empty seats right here. I know it says reserved, but I'm going ahead and make sure a few of you got something to eat. All right. Next, we will have Brother Bobby Seale join us. Hello, Mr. Bobby. How are you? Good to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good. Well, I know you were briefed. If you want to go ahead and share a little bit about what you're here to speak about today, I'm not going to spoil it for anybody because I've heard a few good things from you before. But I'll be checking back in to wrap things up when it's time.
All right. Sure.
Okay.
Yes. Malcolm X became a very pivotal for me to begin to organize in the communities, particularly when he created his mosque and vowed that he would work for Black community unity. That was very, very important. Now, I had been influenced also prior to this period by Nelson Mandela and his plight in South Africa at the time. And then later, I guess a year before 63, early 63, impressed by Martin Luther King at the Oakland Auditorium in Oakland, California, a packed audience of 6,000 people. And at another point, Malcolm, before he left the Nation of Islam, came and spoke in West Oakland at McClymonds High School auditorium. And I went to hear him there. And I just loved his boldness about pointing out the racism, the what have you, etc. It's mounting factors that in those particular periods. Now, actually, prior to really getting into organizing, me, I'm a high-tech person. I mean, Martin Luther King was religious. Malcolm X was a brother who evolved with the Nation of Islam to deal with the realities of our oppression, etc., and so on. But it was Malcolm X left the Nation of Islam, what was that, in late 1963, November or something like that, if I remember correctly. And I quit my job. Now, the job I was on is that I was working at the Kaiser Aerospace and Electronics. I worked the engineering department there. I'm a high-tech person. I'm not a preacher as such, but I am a spokesperson. I can say what I want to say. But my point is, I quit that job behind Martin Luther King first impressed me some months before, and then Malcolm X impressed me when he was leaving the Nation of Islam. And then I went out and I wound up creating a community program for youth jobs program in North Richmond, California. It's in the San Francisco, Oakland Bay area. And I worked that program. At the same time, I was taking 6 or 9 credit hours 6 or 9 credit hours at Merritt College. I lived across the street from Merritt College. And it was just an evolved thing that while he left, and then he did the Ballad of the Bullet, and then I would get these, I think it was the Militant newspaper, Militant newspaper, it's a socialist paper. Although I was not a socialist as such, I didn't know any socialism really at all, but that particular paper would print verbatim his various speeches, having left the Nation of Islam. And one of the verbatim, they would do that. So I would get that. Whenever that would happen, I had Richard Aoki, the Japanese guy who was the socialist who had the Militant, and he would give it to me because I said, I will give anytime you get that, give me the issue because I want to see what Malcolm is saying, what he's doing. And it came up on the Ballad of the Bullet that they printed. And I was impressed with that and his vow to develop Black community unity. This was really the key. I created this other program, and it was a tutorial program, 100 youth, et cetera, along with 5 other students. We created that. We got the grants and all that kind of stuff. It was a war on poverty program, but we got the grants and stuff to pay the youth and all that kind of stuff. But my point is, it was that what was going on here with me researching my Afro-American history as a whole, and Malcolm X was right in the middle of me researching this, and then teaching the tutoring youth. They were tutored. The tutor youth, we paid them a minimum wage at the time, and that was $1.25 an hour for 20 hours a week. The student, we had 100 students, and Black students, African-American community students. And the more important thing is that I wanted to educate the brothers and sisters, as I had researched my history, my African-American history profoundly. I mean, I had everything from all the wars that Black folks have fought in with Dr. Herbert Apthacker's work, and all the slave revolts that went down, and I'm revolving around Malcolm and some other groups, and we're having meetings at my house because I live right across the street from Merritt College, and the whole thing. And I'm advocating what Malcolm was about, getting unity in the Black community. And my point is that if we're going to get unity, and then Kwame Ture and others came out with Black Power at the very beginning of 1965. And Black Power to me meant that you have to have political power seats to really change stuff. And I did my research on how many Black politicians existed in the country at the time. And I came up with only 55. Maybe it was a few more people of color, et cetera, but I came up with 55. That's all that was duly elected to any political office in the country at the time, including Adam Clayton Powell in New York and stuff. So the real impact came while I put together this group to meet at my house twice a week. And since I had money and funds, I always had a job. I was never without a job because I had too many skills, because I'm an architect, I'm a structural repairman for high performance aircraft. I was raised a carpenter from age 7 years old when my father built our first home in Port Arthur, Texas. And then that was the middle of World War II. And then my father's job, my father was drafted for the job, not in the military, but because of his carpentry skill and that, and then caused us to move to California and what have you, et cetera. And I grew up being taught a carpenter because after the World War II was over, he had his own carpentry and furniture repair shop, et cetera. And it was very lucrative for him. And I learned all of these skills and trades, et cetera. And then through the Air Force and other techniques, I learned all the skills and stuff in structural repair for high performance aircraft. And then I wound up working on, and after the 4 years of university, I wound up working at Kaiser Aerospace Electronics doing non-destruct testing for all engine frames and exhaust housing, all 3 stages of exhaust housing for the Gemini missile program. This is a space program. I didn't work on ballistic missiles. Ballistic missiles were separate. Those were war missiles. The Gemini missile was about the space program. And it was about putting up those satellites that cause us to have this instant internet connection around the world. But that's where I come from. And in that context, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, before Malcolm was murdered, I caught a picture of them shaking hands, Martin Luther King, because I had been impressed by Martin Luther King also, and also by Nelson Mandela. And then Malcolm X was the third person that I was truly impressed with. And his plight and his program, the unity in Black community. So what happened here is I created a committee group to come into my house, students. Bertram Morrell, he was one of my key student groups who now today, works in Washington, D.C. But my point is that getting Black history in on the one hand, and then two, how to organize Black folks to get more political power. That became the foundation. And that concept of Black unity in the Black community on the part of Malcolm X was the real key thing that I was after. And that, in effect, I created this fact group and we made our arguments. I made people write papers. We would write papers. And, I had a great job. I get 3 or 4 times. I'm being paid 3 or 4 times the minimum wage in my skills and abilities. And it's like University of California became the research grounds for me. And I discovered that University of California had 26 libraries. It blew my mind. It had a separate anthropology library, a separate psychology library, a separate sociology library, but all cross-indexed. And I'm just saying, this is where I got so much information. I must have wound up with 150 different works and publications related to the struggle, the history. I mean, all kinds of stuff. Dr. Lorenzo Dow Turner and surviving Africanisms of Black language, what have you, et cetera. And this committee I created had about 14 people in it, 2 or 3 women and some other brothers, but boom. And then Huey came by. I says, if you're going to work with me, you got to write a paper. Well, Huey was a person who couldn't write much at all. He could talk, but he couldn't write at all. But he did not participate in the Black History Fact Group thing. But anyway, with that, we wrote papers or we synopsized materials. And in synopsizing materials, in other words, Malcolm was killed. And then I was really upset with that. I had a little one-man riot the day Malcolm was killed. This is what happened. And this led me to set up a Black History Fact group to put Black history into the curriculum of Merritt College. And in effect, we were successful. We did that. And I asked Huey to come over, and he says, no, I'm going to law school now. And Huey had graduated. So me and Bertram Morrell went on to, a few months later, to organize a whole rally at Merritt College in the name of Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, and others to say we're not going to fight in the war in Vietnam. Now, remember, I had been in the military service, so I had my experience. A lot of us had done that. But my point is, here we were not going to do that. So we organized this rally at Merritt College, the first time. And we pulled together 600 Black students in that rally. And we got 200 of them or more to sign up to be part of a new Black student organization called Soul Students Advisory Council. In other words, I'm telling you this is because I'm bouncing off of where Malcolm was coming from about the Black unity in the Black community. This is the key to where we're coming from. And with that, we got Black history in. And then my argument became, at the point that they signed the voting rights bill, Lyndon Johnson signed the voting rights bill, I think it was. And with that, how to get people duly elected, I did research across the country. And this is right after Malcolm X was killed, research to find that there were only 55 Black people duly elected to any political office in the United States of America. That's what I found. And this is all before, we're playing a year and a half before I created the Black Panther Party. So that unity in the Black community became the fact that we had to get Black folks registered to vote, and especially where they're concentrated in certain cities and stuff, we got to take over political seats. That's the only way you're going to get some real Black power. In other words, more of us Black folks and people of color had to do this and had to unify based on Malcolm X's argument in my head and my thinking at that time. And that is the key to why I started the Black Panther Party. In effect, what happens here is that we do this rally and we sign these people up. I hadn't seen Huey for 4 or 5 months. He came to the rally at the tail end and it blew his mind that we had 600 people in that rally. He came at the tail end of the rally after I recited this poem, Uncle Sammy Called Me Full of Lucifer, a poem written by a little boy, I forget the brother's name, but I picked it up out of the Liberator magazine. I mean, you have to imagine, I had subscribed periodicals related to the struggle, what have you, et cetera, to over 25 different magazines and papers and Oliver Stone and whoever else. So my scene was a hotbed of the history, the facts, the struggle. Martin Luther King, what he was doing was progressive, everything, all of this stuff. Nelson Mandela, and then you had organizations like CORE and Congress for Racial Equality, et cetera. This thing was on. So how can I get people unified, Black America unified, like Malcolm had talked about, because that's what he was about, in my sense of what was to be done. And that was the key. So when Huey came to that rally, it blew his mind. you organize all these people? I said, yeah, man, I told you, you say you wasn't interested because you was going to law school and all that crap. I said, boom, so later. Well, where you going now? The rally's over. I said, we going across the street to my house in the backyard. And most of these brothers and sisters that signed up said they're going to be there. What are you going to do there? I said, I got barbecue for everybody. Barbecue. I said, yeah, man, I cook. I'm a shooter. I'm a carpenter. I'm a builder. I'm an architect, whatever, Huey. So, I mean, I'm arguing with him because to me, boom. So he's followed me around. Anyway, with that, somehow or another, it got to a point when I showed Huey, what, 2 years, 3 years before, before I created the Black Panther Party, all my rifles. I was raised a hunter too, a hunter and a fisherman. And my father, when I was 12 years of age, bought me a 30-30 Winchester high-powered rifle. And prior to that, they let me shoot with a 22 while they hunt deer. I have to shoot squirrels, though, but I went there to shoot deer. But as I turned 12, under the law, a 12-year-old can get 2 deer tags, etc., hunting a high-powered rifle. So my father bought me a brand new high-powered rifle, 30-30 Winchester. I'm not talking about that Winchester 73 in the movies. I'm talking about a high-powered rifle you can knock an elephant down with hollow-tip ammo. My point is, so I'm proficient with guns. We hunted rabbit, we hunted pheasant, we hunted all the hunting seasons. And we do our work. I go to school. I never miss a day in school, etc. I do every kind of architectural design course for the whole 3 years of high school. And I get nothing but A's in that. And I get A's in mathematics, but I get C's in language arts and stuff. I have to, but my point is, how do I do this? So Huey kept hanging around, and I says, well, I have to figure out a way to get Black people unified, because we're going to have to get more political seats, because I had did my research at that point that the voting rights bill had been signed. And here it was coming 2 years down. And then Huey suggested that we patrol the police. I says, why? Well, if we patrol the police, he said, then we could get some attention. I said, okay, I've got to say, okay, because he periodically is coming around, hanging around me. And I said, we could do that. And then we came up with the idea, once I got it in my office, etc., working for the city government still at this time. This is where I'm working now. And I'm making 3-4 times the minimum wage. My point is, I'm the community liaison for the North Oakland Neighborhood Service Center. This is where Merritt College and my home in a 300-400 square block was called North Oakland, where I became that community liaison with that program. It was connected with the War on Poverty program. But I was working with the city government at the time. I'm creating the Black Panther Party. And I wrote the total 10-point platform and program. We discussed it with Huey, but I'm the one that did the writing. Huey did not know how to write well at all. He would memorize statements and stuff in different books, and the only other books I've seen Huey with was E. Franklin Frazier's Black Bourgeoisie, Lerone Bennett's Before the Mayflower, and he had a Machiavelli book or something else. But me, I had 150 books and materials that to get Black history in one semester, that my committee met twice a week. And when we did present it, we won it out over the dean, and the dean opened it up to put Black history in Merritt College. And then from there, we created the rallies and stuff. And then I had a lot of people involved, but more importantly, I was going to try to patrol and observe these police as an issue to capture the imagination of the people, to see how we could get quick unity or quick support for my new organization.
Brother Bobby?
Yes.
Brother Bobby?
Yes.
I apologize. Your stories are great, and we have a few more people we want to make sure are heard today.
We will do that. I will continue.
Okay.
I will close out here by saying, in effect, I went out legally, we researched the law, etc., to patrol the police and observe the police. And that cop jumped out of his car and says, "You have no right to observe me." And we stated, no, California State Supreme Court ruling states that every citizen has a right to stand and observe a police officer carrying out their duty as long as they stand a reasonable distance away, and we'll observe you whether you like it or not. And we all had guns, but we did not point to them. Well, I mean, because I got it down to a science of how we're going to do this. And I told Huey, we're going to recite the law of our right to observe the police. Now, you couldn't point weapons at people. We had all those law points down.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Anyway,
thank you, sir.
That was the gist of how Malcolm X and where he was coming from got me to push to get a new organization going in the community where we can hopefully get more political seats, thereby gaining more political power seats.
All right. Thank you. Okay, as you can, I appreciate the energy in the room. Thank you to Brother Gus, I call him Uncle Gus, and Brother Bobby Seale for their wonderful, rich stories of activism. Without further ado, I hope everyone got something to eat. I'm next. We want to make sure this space is honored and respected as well for present day activists and people who should be acknowledged, and about voices that have been ignored or disrespected. I am happy to introduce our special guest of honor today. But before I do that, I'm going to introduce a family member of Karen Wells. I would like to introduce Sherman up to the podium. And Sherman is going to share a few words, and then we will have our guest speaker of the day, Ms. Karen Wells. Sherman?
Good afternoon. I'm Sherman Wells, born and raised in the birthplace of Malcolm X, North Omaha. You know, there's the Omaha and then there's North Omaha. So in this city, I have well over 5,000 to 10,000 family members. I'm a direct descendant from the dozens of cousins on my father's side, and on my mother's side, I'm related to the Wells, Scapes, Abrams, Morgans, and McGee's. The person I'm here to introduce on this day, the day our brother Malcolm was born, is one of my family members. Growing up, she has always had that fire burning deep inside her. The fire of strong will, the fire of fury, and the fire of resilience. And on 22/22, that fire was turned up when Mark Hanneman with the MPD executed her son, my cousin, Amir Knox, during a no-knock search warrant. Previously, Karen and I spoke in December of 2021 about her coming to Omaha. We was excited to plan a family reunion when she came home in February. And also with Amir's passion to help with the youth, he planned on joining us as part of the Untamed Summer community engagement to meet all y'all. However, instead of us doing that, we had to migrate to Minnesota to attend Amir's funeral. That day, 22/22, forever changed the dynamics of our family. Now we are on a mission to ban no-knock search warrants across the United States. It is my honor and pleasure to be here today to introduce the woman who is leading the charge all the way to Washington, D.C. The mother of Amir Knox, the daughter of Viola Morgan, and the native daughter from the birthplace of Malcolm X, North Omaha, Nebraska, my beautiful cousin, Karen Wells Morgan.
Thank you. I asked my cousin to stand next to me because it's still fresh for me, so I'm going to get emotional. My name is Karen Wells. I was born and raised in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm the mother of Amir Knox. My baby was only 22 years old, and he was executed by the Minneapolis Police Department on February 2nd, 2022, during a no-knock warrant, where he was sleeping on the couch visiting his cousin. His cousin, nor his cousin's girlfriend, or my son Amir were listed on the search warrant. It was actually a no-knock warrant for property. Property means clothing, items, anything. It could be a couch, not a person. St. Paul Police Department told them that they did not want to do a no-knock warrant. It was not warranted. At that time, it was just for property. But Minneapolis Police Department decided, we're not going to assist you if you don't let us do a no-knock warrant. So, because they decided to do a no-knock warrant, my son is no longer here. They knew that when they went to that address, that it was people of color. They already did their surveillance, they did their due diligence, but they knew once they went in, and upon 9 seconds of executing my baby, they start asking questions. Who is he? Well, if you would have took the time to be respectful, and when you entered that door with a key, my son did not hear you coming in. As you started to yell and kick the couch twice, you startled my child. He is still wrapped up in a blanket. He is looking, he's confused, he's startled, he's wondering what is going on. He's probably still in a dream. And then as he reaches, like he was supposed to, because he doesn't know that that's the police department, he's thinking that somebody's breaking into that apartment. As he reaches for his legal firearm, and I mean legal, at the age of 22, an African-American male has a legal firearm. And he had the right to reach for his gun. And at that time, he was shot more than 3 times. They're reporting 3 times. It was more than 3 times. So because of this, I am being the voice for my baby. Moving back to Nebraska is bittersweet, but at the same time, I came with just my older child. His older brother, who will be 25 next month. I was supposed to come back with my younger son as well. But instead of being here in the flesh, my baby's with me in spirit. So my thing is, I have to be the voice and I have to speak for him. His main thing was starting a LLC called Saving the Youth. And I helped him get his license for that, to get it licensed. And he was so adamant about coming here, working with Sherman. He's very musically inclined. They get that from their father. He was an upcoming rapper in the Twin Cities at one point. And so it's just like a natural thing for my babies. It just comes natural for them. But at a young age, Amir came to me and he always said, Mom, he said, your generation needs to start it and we need to finish it, meaning his generation. And he started a blueprint, and that's what I'm going to do. He laid out the blueprint. He wanted to save the youth. He had a voice. He's very adamant about the young kids growing up, his peers, his family, his brother, his cousins. He's also adamant about making sure that they do what they need to do. And as a young Black male, he listened to his father. He came to Texas with me. He moved there with me. We lived there. He went back and forth to the Twin Cities just to do DoorDash. Because, you know, he can make more money in Minnesota because it was smaller, but he was coming back and forth. And it's bittersweet. It's not bittersweet because of the disrespect and how they did my son, that he was actually born and raised in the Twin Cities, and the Twin Cities took his life. So as his mother, I feel very disrespected and very disgusted by that. At this time, they chose not to. The Attorney General, Keith Ellison, chose not to bring charges because he basically said that the police officer, you know, there's a law going that if he feels imminent danger, that he can do what he did. But at the same time, you should have never had to draw your weapon. If you had time to kick a couch twice and you knew when you walked in, you saw a body up underneath a blanket, you had time to go through your list of de-escalation with my child. Then after you shoot my child, you pursue to dive on his back and lay on him while he's moving around trying to get away or whatever. So as his mother, I have not watched all the videos. I refuse to, because it is going to take me to a place where I don't think that I will ever return from. And it may not be a good thing, not for me, but for them. So right now, I feel like they could have done more. Mayor Fry said there would be no more no-knock warrants after the execution of Breonna Taylor, but that was a lie because my son Amir died. As I spoke at my son's funeral and quoted Malcolm X saying, "The chickens are coming home to roost," I warned everyone, to the chief of police, the mayor, MPD, and all involved, that everything that they've done in that city will be revealed. The findings from the Minnesota Department of Human Rights was released last month. It does not look too good for the city of Minneapolis or the MPD. As his mother, I believe banning no-knock warrants across the United States of America will help save the lives of African Americans first and foremost, and other people of color. In 2022, we are still fighting for equality and justice because of the color of our skin. In 1992, when the movie Malcolm X came out starring Denzel Washington, I could not believe it when I found out that Malcolm X was born in Omaha, Nebraska. I never read this in any of the textbooks as I was growing up. I was furious, as well as my peers, while learning and attending college at UNL. We felt betrayed and lied to. Malcolm X wanted equality for himself, his family, and his people. Both my sons and myself have always said, "We are Malcolm." And his quote, "By any means necessary, let us know that we war and are warriors." We believe in bringing back our communities, villages to raise a child, and saving the youth. We should not have to bury our sons and daughters in order to make change. My son Amir created a blueprint and created an LLC called Saving the Youth. As his mother, I'm going to make sure it is completed. I will continue to be his voice because his life was stolen when he was just becoming only 22, not a man, just 22. We are no longer going to vote for the lesser of the two evils and for those that look like us but don't care or represent us. In order to grow a flower, you must plant the seed and dig your fingers into the soil. To those of you that think you know what's best for those that vote you in, make sure you visit and are active in the communities, and only then can you wash the soil off of your hands. I am Malcolm. Wrong son, right mother.
Grace. Grace. You spoke with grace. You've carried this load with grace. And you have grace. And you've been gracious and patient. And not only in this room, but those you see and don't see support you. And know we pray for you, but we also move on your behalf. Because sometimes prayer ain't enough, and faith without works is dead, and we all know that. So that's what we're going to do. For those who are conscious of time, it is 12:31. So if anyone needs to get anywhere, just giving you an update on the time. I just want to acknowledge a few people in the room. I want to acknowledge Brother Johnny No Good in the back, who's also a relative who traveled to Minnesota and was on the front lines. I want to acknowledge my elder, Carl Tyler. Kitrin Zeichel, who's been a warrior for Ed and Mondo, who were the two Black Panthers in Omaha, who are rarely recognized. And Brother Bobby asks about them regularly. He don't lose none of his soldiers. He remembers them all. Brother Jeremiah Neal over here in the front on the right of this table, who created these beautiful artworks on Malcolm X. If anybody's interested in commission or to purchase any of those, you can talk to Brother O'Neill or Brother Neal here. To all the volunteers in the back, to the staff of Malcolm X Memorial Foundation, thank you. And Sister Celeste, I cannot forget you, in her beautiful quilt back here dedicated to Brother Malcolm. The middle school students from 2011 who created this beautiful painting in the back, the previous board presidents of the Malcolm X Memorial Foundation and board members of the Malcolm X Memorial Foundation. I wouldn't be here, Joanna wouldn't be here, and we wouldn't be here without them and their work. Verena Moore, Tiffany Gamble, who does great work, and she was one of the first people to bring a tech program to the Malcolm X Foundation. And we cannot forget Joaquin Fox, who was on the front lines after the protests of George Floyd. We have historians in this room. We have elders in this room. We have activists in this room. We have Brother Shamari, who's done the Soul Food Festival in this room. We have, I'm sorry. Oh, go ahead. We got plenty of people who are doing the work in this room. We have the House of Afros, Capes and Curls, founder in this room. She's next to Sister Celeste in the back. And she teaches history through play and through game and all these other things. There are so many beautiful people. Sister Audrey, who was one of our first hired tour guides. Precious Leslie, who's been working with the Justice for Kids initiative. Sister Cece, I don't forget about you. She always in the community doing something. I met her when she was hugging so-called gang members on 40th Ave. And nobody wanted to recognize that work, but I recognize that work because sometimes brothers just need a hug. We might come off hard, we might have a whole lot of stress, but all we need is just a hug. And some people wonder why they got girls shaking in their butts in the back. That's called looking for nurturing, but they don't know how to identify it. So what they do is they objectify it. They do what capitalism does, pervert it and turn it into something worth making money off of, rather than what its real root is, which is the searching for nurturing. Ms. Doris Moore, we appreciate you and the mental health work that you do in this community. Manny, and the community work you do in this community at the Fabric Lab. If you need anything, go to any events. Fabric Lab is on the front lines right now on 24th Street, doing a lot of work. Sister Wyshell Davis, who was the first Black Power person I met in the projects. So it's just so many beautiful people. Brother John Chapman for coming out and covering our work here. The archivist, Elijah, who's been in a lot of these events before I was even on the scene, who always keeps a camera. Brother Melvin, his sincere heart in working for this community and working with our youth. There's so many people. The Black Agenda Alliance, a group of Black folks who are dedicated to just being Black and making sure that Black things are recognized and pushed forward. There are so many Black people in this community. We're a small number in Omaha, Nebraska, but we do a mighty work. We do a mighty work. And so I don't want any of us to forget while we're here that we all have work to do, and our presence alone, collectively, is what's actually going to make this thing change. Find an idea that we all believe in, and we push that thing forward. So I'm not going to talk too long. I'm going to pass the mic to our esteemed and my cherished friend, Joanna LaFleur, our new executive director, who's been with this organization since before I came along, and that's over 12 years. Joanna, can you say our closing words?
Again, I just want to thank everybody for coming to the Malcolm X birthday celebration, May 19th. Don't forget May 19th. As you start planning for next year, make sure you come back. And for the rest of the week, we will have free events for the community. If you're not aware of them, or if you are, I'll share a few. This evening, we're going to have just a light cocktail hour so people can view the archive images of past Malcolm X celebrations here. And what you'll learn is that this has been going on since 1968, and they used to have parades and food and speakers and guest performances, and it's time to bring that back around. It's time to celebrate Malcolm X Day the way we used to. So I encourage you to get involved. I will be calling for committee members to make sure that this is a true community effort, as Leo said. And then tomorrow we'll have a youth poetry night hosted by a brother here, Shamar Huggins. So if you have some youth who do want to attend, talk to him. But that will be at 6:30? 6:30. And then Saturday we'll have our all-day festivities. There'll be tours. There'll be reading group for preschool age in the morning. And then we will have dance performances and drill teams like we used to right outside, weather pending. And then feel free to come back Sunday as well if you didn't get a chance to get a tour. So thank you all for coming, and I look forward to meeting you in person. If I haven't yet, please come say hi to me. Thank you.